Data is a story. It's got a story to tell, and these people now are those minstrels, those storytellers that are taking this and they're telling the story of the business, of their particular team, and how they're helping the business build success.
Your data has secrets. Secrets that could change everything if you only knew where to look. Welcome to the Data Secrets Podcast. Welcome to the Data Secrets Podcast, where we uncover how business leaders crack the code, find truth in their data, and turn insight into action. Today, we have a special guest, technology leader Tony Gondick. Tony, welcome.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. So, Tony, a lot of manufacturers talk about data and AI. Everyone's talking about it, right? But you at Kawasaki Engines, you guys have actually centralized your data, you've governed it, and then built agentic AI on top. So I'm just curious, like for other manufacturers out there, like what do you think, or why do you think so many folks never get as far as you guys have?
Excellent question to begin with. I've spent a lot of time talking with other peers and other individuals in this industry and in this space. And one trend that continues to come out is within manufacturing, we've built a reputation around our build quality, around the consistency in how our products are manufactured. And so when you ask folks to introduce some new change, a disruption to that, they get very concerned about how is that going to impact my brand and my brand's reputation, right?
Yeah.
And so they get into this trend where what we have is good enough. Why change if people are buying our product and we really don't need to involve anything else to make modifications to improve upon that? And so the conversation will generally get into then, well, if you're not changing, your competition certainly is. And so we took that mindset of our competition is always looking for ways to gain market share. And my personal belief is that what we have is never good enough. We have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to change because our customer and our markets are always changing. So we took the approach to continue to build on emerging technology, adopt AI as a platform, and feed it a lot of the data that we have. As a 130-year-old company, you can imagine we've got a lot of data. So we need to be able to understand the story that it's telling, and we feel that AI can help us in that.
And so folks never get that far because there's this resistance to change. And they kind of need someone like you who is a kind of a pioneer for change, because you're never satisfied because, hey guys, everybody else is chasing after us. We've got to keep running. Is that right?
I would agree with that. Yes. Yeah. Nice. Because as I said, the markets are always changing. What we're seeing is a lot of non-traditional impacts and changes to our markets, to our customer. And Amazon is the best example of that. They continue to introduce different disruptions across the board. They're the ones that have set delivery timeframes. They're the ones that have set return timeframes and customer interactions. Much like Walmart and Target in developing their apps have set precedents for what a good customer integration or interaction is. And so as you talk about different global companies, and as the markets tend to blend, those interactions of the customers start to bleed into every interaction they have with every supplier, with every producer, with everyone involved in their orbit. And so as an organization, as a manufacturer, we have to keep an eye on that, and we have to make sure that we are looking at who is setting the trends in these areas and how is that going to impact us overall in a long-term perspective.
I love how, while you wouldn't say that Amazon is your competitor,
Not directly, correct. Yeah.
they're not making engines like you guys do, and
Hmm.
but I love that you're looking outside of your industry or your direct competitors for inspiration and yeah, that's fantastic. Could you, so, we talked a little bit before this about, the business and, when people think Kawasaki, I know I was thinking jet skis and motorcycles, but could you give us just a quick snapshot of the business you're a part of, the scale you're operating at, and, what might make your environment uniquely hard or challenging?
Certainly. And you are right. As soon as I say Kawasaki, everybody goes to the Ninja motorcycle, the jet
Oh, yeah.
skis, our Ridge and Mule line of side by sides. But if you look at the Kawasaki global brand, it is actually made up of many different divisions across different industries. You'll find a Kawasaki division in robotics and aerospace, in precision machinery, in the power sports, which does the motorcycles. But there's also shipbuilding and even plane and helicopter building. Now, my particular division is the general purpose engines. And our primary product is a build to order engine for our OEMs that is a high horsepower, small profile engine that you'll find in the back of a lot of professional landscaping equipment. So if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you take a look at a lot of the zero turn mowers that they'll have out for viewing, you'll see a Kawasaki engine that powers that machine. And that is what I support. We have 7,700 authorized dealers across the United States. We have a global distribution chain through Canada, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Europe. I think the only continent we may not touch right now is Africa. So we have all of these customers. We have all of these products that are out there, and we're running operations out of Michigan with R&D and business operations from a small office of around 150 individuals. The team that
Wow.
supports them, my team within IT, is only 4 individuals. And so we have to act very much in a nimble and agile method to make sure that we're staying ahead of the competition, that we are bringing in emerging technologies, reducing technical debt, and contributing to the success of the business. And I'm happy to say, with the choices we've made, with a lot of the effort that I've done over the last 8 years with Kawasaki, we are achieving those goals.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you're in a pretty unique role because, you know, technology is very holistic in your case, right? You have everything from traditional infrastructure technology, you have everything from Microsoft and all that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then applications that the business uses every day, like Salesforce, Manufacturing Cloud, and then you also have data and analytics, right? You have the basically,
Yeah.
and now AI,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
so, a lot of times I feel like companies bifurcate that, and so what I think that's actually a really powerful combination. I'm curious your thoughts on kind of reasons to consolidate versus reasons to separate those responsibilities.
Part of our technology stack, well, in fact, all of our technology stack was built over time. As a business
Hmm.
process became relevant and evident, generally you would throw a technology solution at that. And then what you would find after a number of years is you would have a mainframe over here and an AS400 over there. You'd have a system of record and an ERP, software that duplicated functionality all over the place. And after a while, the people that supported those systems were long gone. The coders that built your ERP or your systems of record are no longer there. They've retired. It's using older technology and programming languages. So, how do you deal with that? And so, we had to make a conscious decision, knowing that technology continues to evolve and change substantially almost every 3 years. In order for the company to remain successful, how do you do that? How do you reduce the dependency on all of these individual systems? And how do you make cost effective choices so that the company isn't just blowing all of their profit margin on IT solely? Because you have staffing costs, you've got development costs, research and development, you've got
Mm-hmm.
building. So you need to make sure that profit and revenue is spread evenly across all areas. And so we took a really hard look at that. And after determining where we had overlap, we started to eliminate a lot of those legacy technologies and legacy applications because the newer platforms that were out there, and we'll use Salesforce as a good example of this, they've started to build natively into a out of box format a lot of those business operations. And we had then the added value in making those choices, the centralized data. By doing that, we were eliminating the silos and who was entering in data. We had more data consistency and we had better data accuracy because it was one set of data fields and information that was being worked on by all the teams with the necessary permissions instead of that system here and that system there and trying to tie all of those together either programmatically or through some import and export process.
Yeah, that's actually a great pivot into our first data secret, where we're talking about kind of getting the data all in one place, as kind of the starting point, right? Because a lot
Yes.
of companies, when they start this journey towards, hey, we grew organically, we have all these systems, and we're trying to make better decisions from it. But some systems hold some information, this other system over here holds this other information, and now it's like, I need to see a more complete, cohesive picture of the business. And
Yeah.
so they start down this path of we need, business intelligence. And these days, a lot of people jump to we need AI first, right? But I think the biggest lesson I've learned from you so far is around this centralization. Like this is a process we need to go through, and step one is to bring that data together. So could you tell us just a little bit about that story of how you guys went through that?
Yeah. So as we took a look at AI, and as I did my own internal investigation, what I was seeing was a higher potential for introducing bias and hallucination when you had multiple data sources. The less control that you had over how the data is inserted into a system and how you retrieve it back out. And we'll touch on even the reporting engine that will extract that information. But the more sources you had, the higher risk that you had in some additional bias and additional hallucinations being introduced into a more global data set. And so we had to make sure that as we were taking all of these data sources across all of these different systems, we first went and cleaned up what we could. We know data is never, ever going to be 100% accurate. As long as there's someone entering in data, you're going to introduce their personal bias, you're going to introduce their human data entry errors, and so you have to really identify what is your risk tolerance. If our data is 95% accurate, are we okay with that? Well, what about 85%? What about 80%? Can we go to 60%? Those are internal business risk conversations. But once you have that, that sets the bar then for how you bring in your data. You take a look at what your tolerance is, you start cleaning your data to that tolerance, and you start then to centralize it. And by doing that, you're eliminating that silo, you're reducing and mitigating a lot of that bias and hallucination, and you have a more accurate collection of data that you can then feed into your AI solutions or really any of your technology stacks, knowing that it is fairly representative of business operations and that it has a story to tell. And that's the most important part. All data is a story. Now, how you build that story with the tools that you choose, with the tolerance levels that you choose, that defines whether that story is going to be a fairy tale where there's a happy ending
Yeah.
or a horror story where you're going to see many Hollywood sequels.
Nice. Uh, yeah. So I was just wondering, for the audience, so I know you guys are on Salesforce Manufacturing Cloud. And so this data centralization from a platform perspective, are we talking about data 360? Are we talking about, I imagine there's an underlying data warehouse of some sort that may have not existed in the past and your team brought it to life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So can you give us just kind of
Yeah.
like your technology landscape just briefly?
Yeah. So we are experimenting with Data Cloud. We'll start there because that's the easier way to
Hmm.
answer this. What
Sure.
we do have, because of all of the product lines and the different OEMs that we have, we decided to put all of that information natively into Salesforce and Manufacturing Cloud.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All of it resides there on platform so that we can reach in and pull out what we need to. We can do our business planning around that data. We can use Power BI as a good BI reporting tool for that information. Now, if we do have to reach out to other systems, mainly we use AWS because we can control the consumption and usage of the storage and Bedrock or any other connecting database and AI solution that might be out there. But we actually use a combination of MuleSoft and Data Cloud to reach out to those systems, pull that in, normalize the data, and then make it available and readable within Salesforce. But really, Data Cloud and MuleSoft is a last choice only because we take a look at all options of how can we retrieve that data. Is it different enough from our current data structures that we need to go and we need to normalize it or rename it or manipulate it in some way? I choose less customization and more native out of box functionality because I think it's cheaper in the long run. And from a long term perspective, I'm trying to reduce the overall cost of maintaining these systems. And so, natively out of box, we feel that that's a better choice for us.
Interesting. Okay, so if I'm an analyst at Kawasaki Engines and I open up Power BI and I'm going to connect to the data, I'm connecting to Salesforce in this case. It's basically your system of record
Yes, yeah.
warehouse. Okay.
Yep, that's it
Wow.
exactly. And then if you do more in-depth reporting, you will
Hmm.
be reaching out to our ERP. We've made that connection. We do have
Okay.
some products that cross divisions, and so if you have to reach out to another AS400 or another cloud-based repository, we can do that as well and take a snapshot of that information. We always leave it in the system of record and only take a snapshot because we don't want to deal with a lot of data leakage
Hmm.
potentially or any other risks in that data being incorrect or manipulated in a way before it gets into our reporting engines.
Okay. Great. Okay, so along those lines, so data secret number two is letting the business do analytics. And so, you guys have gone through many iterations from Salesforce reporting to Tableau. I believe you
Mhm.
tried Tableau for a little bit and then
Yep.
eventually landed on Power BI, because adoption mattered more than elegance, I believe is what you
Yes.
said in the past. And so,
Yes.
um, yeah, could you just tell us about that decision and how you came to that conclusion?
So in our business, in our industry, a lot of our internal business partners are mechanics. They are experts in gas powered engines. They may not necessarily be experts in technology standards or the latest and greatest emerging technologies. And so we had to find a hybrid solution to meet all levels of technical savvy when it comes to technical skills.
Okay.
You're right, absolutely. We started with Salesforce reports. We basically hit a ceiling in that. We
Yeah.
exceeded what the native software could do. Moved into Tableau because we did have some teams that had used that in the past, but we found that adoption and that learning curve was very difficult for a lot of our business operations. And so we had already moved to Microsoft 365 and we had access to Power BI. We turned it on for a couple of more technically savvy advocates in
Hmm.
our organization, and we asked them to pilot this, try this out before we made a commitment into a lengthy or expensive licensing model. What we found by doing that smaller pilot with those technology advocates, they more readily adopted or and adapted into that menu system. They could very quickly see where they needed to go in using the application to build the reports because it was primarily built on Word, Excel, PowerPoint menus.
Yeah.
So they just translated from Word and Excel, Office 365, over to Power BI. And those reports were being built much faster. They could be manipulated much faster, distributed and shared. And so after that, we considered that a successful pilot. We then used those advocates as peer resources in the office, going out and helping the other teams to adopt Power BI, learn the secrets, share what they've learned,
Hmm.
simply because that peer-to-peer interaction was more comfortable for people than an IT to business team interaction.
That's great. And so what, on the continuum of, it sounds like do it yourself, done for you, like where did you guys, because like some of the back end stuff in Power BI, like building data models and writing DAX and these type of things, are fairly complex and kind of the opposite of what the users you described would want to deal
Mhm.
with. And so I imagine you guys kind of fall somewhere in the middle where there's some enablement that happens on your side from the data source perspective, and then people are just connecting to that and building the pie charts and bar charts. Is that
From
a
there
good
on out.
description?
Yeah, that's a fair description. We do curate a lot of the tables and the fields to make
Okay.
it understandable. And really, I don't want it to appear that my IT team is aloof and just turning people loose with all these technologies.
Sure.
We're still there. But with these advocates, what we found is they were more willing to go out and self teach and self learn how to use these technologies. And they would only come to us in IT when they encountered a challenge. There's this great tool called Google and YouTube. People would go out there all the time and they would teach themselves what the best practices are in using BI reporting.
Yeah.
Then, if they couldn't make that connection, if they couldn't get the report to do quite what they wanted, they had already done a lot of the legwork. So then they come to IT somewhere in the middle and say, okay, I can't get it to do this. I can't get it to move any further. Can you help me? And it was a much quicker turnaround in resolving the issue. rather than starting at the very beginning and trying to teach and bring them along in that very lengthy journey. So we found a
Yeah.
lot of success in doing that, and we just encourage more and more. We now have more advocates that are going out, and even without approaching us to say they're doing this, they're just going out and taking the online learning courses and coming back to us with that middle of the process question, the things that they can't quite understand.
That's great. What was there anything that surprised you now that the business is out there doing some of their own analytics?
There's some folks that you wouldn't believe are data nerds, but once they got into the data and they could see how easy they could manipulate the Power BI, the dashboards, and create these stories, these graphics
Hmm.
of the data, they really got into it. There
That's
were
awesome.
folks that, you look at them for the first time and you make an assumption on their personality and how they are, but underneath it all, they're data nerds. And they love to be able to investigate and see what are weather patterns doing? How does that impact our product? If I were to look at this particular area of a city and state, what are the buying groups? What are they doing? And they can tell you all of these interesting stories of what they found diving into the data and having those visuals. Because, like I said at the very beginning, data is a story. It's got a story to tell, and these people now are those minstrels, those storytellers that are taking this and they're telling the story of the business of their particular team and how we're helping them build, or how they're helping the business build success.
Wow. I love that. Yeah, I mean that is the dream, right?
Mhm.
Of analytics is you put the power in the person's hand who can actually, they have the context of the business questions, and they actually have levers that they can pull to then take action. Uh, but a lot of times, historically, those people were unable to self-serve with the
Yes.
data, and so you'd have to ask IT, and you get a spreadsheet, and now you're like, okay, I got to do 700 pivot tables, and
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
the inner outer joins, yeah,
yeah,
the
but yeah, I mean that.
VLOOKUPs and everything else. Well, and now what we've also seen along those lines is they're more willing to go to ChatGPT or Perplexity,
Yeah.
to Grok, and ask specific questions. Now, we did warn them, AI is going to make mistakes. It's only going to be able to tell you what others may have asked and what it may have found on websites. So take what it says with a little bit of skepticism. Don't do 100% of what it says because it could blow up your queries. It could extend the runtime. But if you have questions, if it just doesn't sound right, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you're trying to do and have a more deeper conversation of how IT can help you. But we are seeing more of that self help because the tools are out there. They're more conversational now. They're
Yeah.
becoming smarter to understand context, slang in certain areas, and be able to come back with some really interesting thoughts on how to use the data differently.
That's great. Let's pivot to um, agentic AI as a differentiator in your business.
Mhm.
So I think most people, when they think about AI in manufacturing, they think chatbots, robots, but you guys are using it a little bit differently. So you have a handful of different agentic AI systems and an early warning system. Could you just talk us through some of that landscape and the impact that it's made?
Yeah, so much like our internal customers are mechanics and engineers, the
Hmm.
same goes for our external customers. As we take a look at the authorized Kawasaki dealerships, these are mom and pop shops in a variety of different towns and metro areas that are servicing the zero turn mowers that our OEMs are building. So they know how to fix that engine. They don't know necessarily what all could be done within a computer system. And so when we made the choice to start implementing these agentic AIs, we started very small because we weren't sure what the adoption was going to be if something was there online that you could talk to and ask it questions of. So we're taking a look at just 5 use cases right now. What's my order status? What is the tracking information on my shipment? How do I reset my password? What's my username? Or where is this part used? These are common questions that come in regularly to our customer care team, and we chose those to help reduce the number of phone calls that those questions might generate. And so, as we get ready to turn these on and start using them in a much larger pilot, we are seeing general upward trends in increases of usage. And so, we'll continue to evaluate that over time just to make sure that we're hitting the mark and we're actually producing agentic actions that our customers want. If we start to see a downward trend, obviously that's not achieving the goal, or it's not as great as we think it is in an adoption standpoint. So we may remove that and insert something else. But working closely with the teams, we're identifying what are those repetitive questions that we can help automate. Then with the early warning system, this is more of an internal business team system. We would constantly have different warranty claims and calls coming in about part failures. And in some cases, it could lead to a large service campaign, a in-field repair that might be needed, or heaven forbid, a recall of a particular part. What we felt was if we're reacting to those situations, then it is a far more expensive exercise in doing the research to find out what happened, assembling the team to deal with that, the messaging, the customer interfacing, managing all of what's been fixed, what still needs to be fixed. And so we felt there was a better way of taking that unstructured data and building a more proactive system. And we've been able to do that now using Anthropic as a underlying system there where we can take in our transcribed phone calls, where we can take in our warranty claims and our trouble tickets, our customer sentiment scoring. And we're taking all of that unstructured data and building a central repository that Anthropic can then go out and use business rules to say,
Wow.
we're seeing an increase or a trend in this area. We recommend that you go and you monitor the situation or you do the investigation, because if we can get ahead of that scenario, we can then build the team in real time. We can identify the messaging. We can have an idea of who is all impacted in the scope of that impact, and we can address it much faster before it could ruin our brand reputation. And by doing that, the overall cost then is much more contained because we control the scenario rather than react to the scenario. And the costs then are greatly reduced from a business expense perspective.
Wow. That is, yeah, the early warning thing, I feel like that is the perfect use case for AI today. Like, so in my first job out of college, I worked for a manufacturer, a German company, kitchen and bath fixtures, and we would import them into the US. And part of my role was after sales support of these products, right?
Yeah.
And we would get technical calls and from plumbers or whoever installers saying, "Oh, this is broken," or we see this defect, this toilet doesn't flush very well,
Mhm.
and it was kind of up to us to kind of keep track of that. And so one of my early projects was to work with Germany to create a database to track all of these issues,
Mhm.
get the serial number, but it was all very human, right? And it was,
Subjective. Yes.
and yeah, and someone would
Yeah.
have to look at it to try to spot the trends and see like, oh, well, this particular model has this problem multiple times. The serial number seems to go back to this particular mold, and they
Mhm.
have to like do that rationalization and root cause analysis. Um, and nowadays, you just have AI doing that for you. That's
It,
amazing. How does it
exactly right.
serve it up? How does it inform
So
you?
So we actually have built it onto Power BI. So we
Okay.
have this nice dashboard that shows all of the different causal parts that it has identified. And you have different statuses where it is alerting, in investigation, in remediation, or closed. And so you can very easily tab between the different statuses and find, has anything new come up? What is currently being investigated? What's currently being worked? What have we closed in the past? Because that past information is still another data point, it's another story. So if we can add that on top of anything new, it gives us a more well-rounded view of all of that information. But something that you had mentioned was the, being subjective and having a human try to interpret all of those hundreds or thousands of rows of information that
Mm-hmm.
are coming in from all of these different sources. You could have the same causal part and give it to 15 different uh, technologists or repair shops, and you're going to get 15 different explanations as to what happened. What you need is something that can understand the context of what is meant by that unstructured data, because there's a huge difference between a engine misfiring and an engine causing a fire, right? If it's a human, they may not understand the context of the sentence structure or the information that's contained within it. There might be information missing from a description, but AI doesn't have that bias. It doesn't have that partisanship. It takes exactly what is written as cold hard fact, and now you layer on phone calls and claims and case studies and other data sources. And that starts to round out that story so that you can find it actually is a causal part. We are having a failure in this area. Is it the same supplier? Is it in our manufacturing process? How do we improve our overall capacity with this particular part so that our brands continue to operate with the high level of quality that they're known for?
Yeah. Yeah. So along the same lines around people, you said that the hardest part of technology isn't the technology; it's people, right?
It's the
And
people, yes.
you hinted at this in the beginning. I'm just curious, how do you drive change? And um, yeah, when some people have been there forever, some people don't
Mhm.
see the value in the change. Some people are very protective of the brand and don't want to change because if we
Oh yeah,
change, we might mess it up, right? So,
yeah.
how do you handle that?
So what we found to be successful is the one-on-one interactions that we have with a lot of the business teams. I mentioned earlier we find those technology advocates. Those are the
Hmm.
individuals on a business team that are more willing to try and be flexible with technology. They're not ingrained in their process. Once we do that, we start to see this organic growth of acceptance, because those advocates are now talking to their peers and they're excited about what this technology can bring and the time savings that are out there. And so as that excitement grows, we get more and more advocates for a solution. For those that may still have difficulty in accepting this, we do work with them one on one. We sit down with them in a conference room. It is just us and them. It's like, okay, here's what we're hearing. Here's what we think is a good solution. What concerns do you have? If you had the ability to make one change, what would that be? Invariably, they're coming up with ideas of how it can work better within their mindset. And because we're using these cloud technologies, because we're using Salesforce, we can sit there and we can make changes on the fly, have them refresh and say, did we hit the mark here? Is this what you were envisioning? So we get them to talk more in depth of what their vision is for this, and we try to meet them in the middle. Sometimes we hit it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's a little bit more complicated than just rearranging a web page or inserting a new field or a new calculation. So we will have to take that back, do the development, and then have them test. But we feel if we can get them to take partial ownership over this change, they're much more willing to adapt to that new, whatever, new technology, new process, new tool. And then they're encouraged to spread that to all of their peer groups and grow that.
That's great. Yeah, so as we start to land the plane here, I did want to call out the fact that you were awarded the first golden hoodie for Manufacturing Cloud ever, for kind of a combination of your, like the innovation that you guys do at Kawasaki Engines, but then also your personal contributions towards the community and giving back and helping others. Is there anything, what was that experience like? And is there anything you'd like to elaborate about the why behind
So it did take me by surprise. A huge surprise. I think it was one of the few times I was rendered speechless.
Oh, wow.
So frequently I'm asked to do different summits or keynotes or presentations in the manufacturing industry and in the manufacturing space. And so the group that had awarded me the golden hoodie had started the same way as it always goes. Are you going to Dreamforce? We'd love for you to speak on AI in manufacturing at the keynote, maybe be about 5 minutes. Well, and then, of course, I agreed to that. Then usually what happens is I will ask for the slide deck of all of the topics that are being talked about in that session so that I can make sure that my talking points match up to the bullets and that I'm not deviating off on some weird tangent during this particular session. But I never received the slide deck. They kept delaying and pushing off and outright refusing to give it to me. So I thought it was kind of weird. Then the day of the keynote, I'm getting flooded with text messages. Are you coming to the keynote? We've got a space saved for you. You have to be here at a certain time. You've got to get mic'd up. Where are you? And they were just getting more frantic as the day went on. Right? Yeah.
We got
time here. Go on. So I ended up there plenty of time, 15 minutes to spare. And I'm sitting in the front, but I'm going through in my head all of the bullet points, everything I wanted to say, the people that I wanted to call out, the different technologies. I didn't hear a word of what was being said in the keynote. So they call me up there and ask me to introduce myself. I'm on the stage, and as I tend to do, I'm looking left and right. I'm looking at people in the eye. I'm trying to make connections in the audience. And I just happened to turn towards the comfort monitor that was there, and I saw the next slide, which said Golden Hoodie Award winner. Well, that completely derailed everything that I was saying, and I pretty much was stammering up on the stage, which was the cue for the MC of the event to bring that up. And to save me, essentially. So you can still see the video on Salesforce Plus for the keynote, and you can see me just eyes wide as this huge blessing, and I do
Yeah.
consider it a huge blessing, was presented because that's who I am. I love helping people. And so if I can help you overcome a challenge that we may have encountered in the past, I consider that a win. I truly believe that whether you're talking data, whether you're talking technology or AI, everyone is starting at a certain place in their journey, and someone
Yeah.
has been there before. If we can help each other out, we'll make the world a little bit better, and maybe we'll see greater adoption of that technology with all of these great lessons learned.
I love that. I love that. Um, yeah. So what's next for you in the engines division and yeah, coming years?
So we're going to continue to add more data. I mean, that's just a fact of any business. As we continue to build more products and add more data, there's going to be slight changes based on business opportunities, and that's going to change our formulation and what kind of tools we might need to understand that data. So, what I envision over the next couple of months this calendar year and really leading into year 3 and 5 coming up is adding more data into our AI models, identifying other business processes like image analysis. There's a huge
Mm,
avenue there that we could
yeah.
leverage AI in, whether it be a manufacturing line or in our testing. Image analysis can find all of the nuances of that test, of the difference between a accurate product and something that might have some variance in how it was built. So we think we can save some time there. But I'm also seeing where I believe we're going to see a consolidation of the AI platforms. It seems like every day there's a new AI platform that has a unique skill set.
Yeah.
You have, Chat GPT, which is like the Google of everything. They've thrown the kitchen sink into AI and they've got a little bit of everything. Or you have Anthropic, which is really good at document scanning, ingestion, and bringing back understanding. You have Grok, which is really good at heavy data analysis. So I think we'll see a lot of those smaller platforms start to be gobbled up, and you'll have primary players with a very unique skill set. And so, as an organization, you'll be able to choose a specific AI platform to meet your data needs, your data structure, but also your business opportunities. Only because of that consolidation. So, it's going to be an exciting time, I think,
Yeah.
in the next 3 to 5 years, and it'll be a lot easier to make choices than once that consolidation occurs.
Yeah. I like that you're doing kind of a hybrid approach between Salesforce is a core part of your technology platform,
Mhm.
and they're doing a lot of their own innovation and research and development and baking AI into Salesforce.
Yes.
And you guys are
Mhm.
making great use of that. But you're not just relying on Salesforce to do everything for you. You've also gone and built this, this model that's analyzing all your after sales support stuff, and early warning system. And you're talking about image processing and, vision kind of stuff. And so you're not just relying on the big behemoth, you're also doing some development yourself and kind of looking outside that. And I love that you're not getting too blindered,
Well,
myopic with it.
yeah, and in the past we've tried to hammer that square peg into a round hole, and it just did not work out very well. It damaged a lot more than it fixed, and so we made the choice years ago. Let's choose the best in breed, the one that was the most flexible solution for a lot of these needs, and
Mm,
continue that over the years. Because it was only, what, 4 or 5 years ago that OpenAI turned on ChatGPT, and then it exploded. You had all
Yeah.
of these other entities, other AIs that are out there. So we want to make sure that we can remain flexible. Because as I said before, I've got a small team. We've got to be agile and nimble. I can't spend a lot of resources on learning another tool. So we have to be able to use and reuse a lot of these out of box solutions just to keep up with the rate that business is changing. And the more that you can do that, I think the better off, and maybe the less gray hair you'll have overall.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could snap your fingers and fix one data problem instantly, what would that be?
I think the biggest thing is the bias that people introduce into the data sets unintentionally, right?
Hmm.
The more
Interesting.
that you're dealing with data, or the more people that you have dealing with data, invariably they can be the most impartial person, but they're still introducing their bias into that data as they collect it, as they condition it, as they provide it to other people. It just happens because we've kind of done this trend through this podcast. Data is a story, and they're trying to get the data to tell their story. So if we can remove that bias, if we can remove that impartiality and have the data just be the data will always tell us what what the status of the system is, or what the state of our business is. We don't need to massage it. We don't need to encourage it in any way. We don't need to remove data sets to tell our version of this story. Let the data be the data and tell the story that it has acquired over the time and with the data sets available to it.
Amen. Tony, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If our listeners want to either follow you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me through Anthony Gondick. You'll see my generated AI visions out there. So just take a look at that. I am on X, but mainly from a research perspective. I don't generally post a lot, but you'll also find me kind of wandering around Dreamforce in San Francisco every year, and also the different Salesforce events. Looking forward to Connections and TDX later. Summits, I'm usually at those wandering around. So hit me up if
Awesome.
you got questions. I'm always happy to grow my community and to help answer questions as best as I'm able.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tony. And to all of our listeners out there, keep digging and you'll find the truth buried in your data. That's the pod. Have a good one.